Siwon was not a bad man. That is the hardest part of this story to understand. He was not cruel by nature. He did not enjoy hurting people. He simply grew up watching his father lose everything, the house, the business, the dignity, and decided very early that he would never let that happen to him. So he built walls. He made plans. He stopped trusting feelings and started trusting numbers. When the opportunity came to marry Haerin, the only daughter of the U Group, one of the country's largest family conglomerates, Siwon did not hesitate. He told himself it was a smart move, a strategic alignment, two people who needed something from each other, formalizing that arrangement with a ring and a ceremony. He needed capital and connections. She needed a husband her conservative father would approve of, someone respectable, presentable, with enough ambition to seem like a worthy partner for the U name. What Siwon did not factor into his calculations was Haerin herself. She was quiet in a way that people often mistook for shyness. She was not shy. She simply did not speak unless she had something worth saying, which made every word she did say carry a weight most people never noticed. She ran 3 of her father's subsidiary departments by the time she was 27. She read financial reports the way other people read novels, not for obligation, but for genuine interest. She had a very dry sense of humor that only came out when she was comfortable, which was almost never, because she was almost never around people who made her feel safe enough to be herself. Siwon was not one of those people, not in the beginning. Their first year of marriage was polite and cold. They shared meals without conversation. They attended events together and performed a version of a couple that satisfied the people watching them. They slept in the same bed with the careful distance of strangers on a train. Haerin never complained about this. She simply watched and waited, and quietly did things she never told him about. She called his project manager once, when she overheard Siwon on the phone, saying a major contract was slipping. She introduced herself casually, asked a few questions, and made 2 calls of her own that saved that contract. She never mentioned it to Siwon. She told herself she was just doing what made sense. She started waking up earlier than she needed to, because she noticed Siwon skipped breakfast, and she knew from the staff that he worked late. So she would leave something on the kitchen counter before she left for her own office. Not a full meal, because that would feel like she was making a point, but something small. A covered plate, a thermos of coffee, something that said, without saying anything, that someone in this house noticed him. He never mentioned it either. Then Sojong came back into his life. They had been together before Haerin, in the years when Siwon was still building himself up from nothing. Sojong was bright, funny, easy to be around. When he had to choose between love and survival, he had chosen survival. Now that survival was secured, or so he believed, some part of him wanted to go back and pick up what he had left behind. He told himself it was just catching up with an old friend. Then it became dinners. Then it became something he could not explain away. He was careful. He thought he was careful. Haerin found out on a Tuesday evening in November. She was not looking for evidence. She had no suspicion she was specifically tracking. She simply came home earlier than expected and heard a voicemail play from his phone, which was sitting on the kitchen counter. The voice was warm and familiar in a way that Haerin recognized immediately, not because she knew Sojong, but because she knew what intimacy sounded like, and this was it, and it was not directed at her. She stood in the kitchen for a long time after the message ended. She did not cry. She did not call her sister or her best friend. She went to her home office, sat at her desk, and spent 2 hours methodically moving every jointly held asset back into her personal accounts. Then she called her lawyer. Then she printed the divorce papers herself, signed her own name, and left them on the dining table with a pen beside them. In the morning, when Siwon came downstairs, she was dressed and had her bag over her shoulder. She looked at him the way you look at someone you have already finished grieving, not with anger, not with tears, with a kind of tired clarity. "I hope you find what you were always looking for," she said. "I clearly wasn't it," and she walked out. Siwon told himself he felt relieved. 8 months later, his company was gone. He had not understood, had truly not understood, how much of his stability had been built quietly on Haerin's name and Haerin's relationships. The contracts she had brokered on his behalf without making it obvious. The investors her family had quietly vouched for. The moments she had positioned him favorably in rooms he did not even know she had been in. Without her, he was just a man with a business card and no one to call. Sojung left 3 months after the company collapsed. She was not unkind about it. She simply said that things had changed, and she needed to think about her own future. Siwon did not argue. He had nothing to offer her, and he knew it, and she knew it, and they both knew the other knew. He spent the next months in a small rented room, going over everything. Not the business decisions, the other decisions. The small moments he had filed away as unimportant, that now looked completely different from this angle. The coffee on the counter every morning. The contract that had somehow saved itself. The way she had looked at him at events, not possessively, not performatively, but with a kind of quiet attention, like she was memorizing something she was afraid she would forget. He had looked right through her for years. Every single day, he had looked right through her. On the first anniversary of their divorce, Siwon was walking home late along the river, when a car ran a red light. He did not die instantly. He lay on the wet road for a few minutes, long enough for his mind to go very quiet and very clear, the way it only does when there is nothing left to protect. And in that silence, the face that came to him was not Sojung's, it was Haerin's. Specifically, it was her face the morning she left. The way she had looked at him without hatred, which was somehow the most devastating thing she had ever done. He closed his eyes. He opened them to sunlight and a ceiling he recognized. It was the morning after his wedding reception, 6 years earlier. He was 31 years old, and his wife was asleep in the next room, and he had never felt more disoriented in his entire life. Siwon sat up slowly and tried to understand what was happening. Every memory was intact. The collapse, the empty apartment, the rain, the road, all of it. And he was here, at the very beginning, with all of that knowledge sitting in his chest like a stone. His first thought, and this tells you everything about who he was not remorse. It was opportunity. He told himself he had been given a second chance to do things right. And by right, he meant he would not make the same mistakes. He would embed himself more deeply in the U group before making any moves. He would secure assets in his own name earlier. He would not let himself become dependent on Haerin's invisible support. This time, he would simply take what he needed and leave on his own terms, before she could leave first. He walked into breakfast with a plan. Haerin was already at the table, reading something on her phone. She looked up when he came in, gave him a polite smile, and looked back down. She was wearing a pale blue cardigan, and there were faint shadows under her eyes. She had not slept before their wedding. He had never noticed that before. He sat across from her, and watched her the way he had never allowed himself to before. Not romantically. Analytically, he told himself. He was gathering data. But data is a strange thing when the subject is a human being. The more you gather, the less it feels like data. Over the following weeks, Siwon executed his plan with precision. He inserted himself into board meetings. He built a relationship with Haerin's father directly. He established a subsidiary under the U umbrella that would eventually give him financial independence. He was faster this time, smarter, more calculated. Then he prepared the divorce papers and had his lawyer contact hers. Haerin sent them back unsigned. Her note said, "I disagree with the terms. Let's discuss." Siwon stared at that note for a long time. In his first life, she had signed without a word. She had not even called him before leaving. And now she was, what? Refusing? Negotiating? He requested a meeting. She arrived on time, sat down across from him, and asked what his proposed timeline was. He explained his position clearly and professionally. She listened, nodded, and then told him, just as clearly and professionally, that she was not going to make this easy for him. "I know what the subsidiary is for," she said. "I know which board members you've been cultivating and why. I know what you're trying to do, Siwon. I've always known." He had no response to that. What followed was the strangest few months of either of his lives. Every time Siwon moved to create distance, Haerin simply did not let it become distance. Not by chasing him, not by making emotional appeals. She just remained, present, composed, unhurried. She never brought up the divorce papers again. She attended their shared obligations without drama. She started doing the small things again, the covered plates, and the quiet advocacy in rooms he did not know she was in. And this time, he noticed all of it, because this time he was looking. He found the notebook in March. He was cleaning out an old office cabinet while reorganizing the subsidiary, and found it tucked behind a row of binders. It was small and gray, and had Haerin's handwriting on every page. He almost put it back. He did not put it back. It was a personal record she had kept during their first year of marriage. She had written about small things, whether he seemed tired when he came home, whether he ate what she left on the counter, whether he looked lonely at the events they attended together. There was an entry from their 3rd month of marriage that said, simply, "He laughed today. Not at me, not for anyone. Just at something on television. I didn't know he laughed like that. I want to hear it again." Siwon read the entire notebook standing up in his office and could not move for a long time after he finished. The night Haerin's father had a minor stroke, they drove to the hospital together at midnight, without planning to. The waiting room was bright and empty, and too cold, and they sat beside each other without talking for almost 2 hours. Siwon noticed, at some point, that Haerin was holding her own hand, squeezing her own fingers in her lap, the way you do when you need something to hold and there is nothing there. He reached over and put his hand over hers. She did not look at him. She did not pull away. She just kept breathing, steadily, and her fingers went still. In the parking garage afterward, under fluorescent lights, Siwon told her the truth. Not about the rebirth. He could not explain that. But everything else, all of it, the plan, the papers. The way he had thought about her in the beginning, the way he had stopped being able to think about her that way, and not known when exactly that had happened. Haerin listened to all of it without interrupting. When he finished, she looked at him for a moment. "I know," she said. A pause. "I've been waiting for you to catch up." They did not have a dramatic reunion. There was no single moment that fixed everything. What happened instead was slower and more real than that. Siwon started showing up. Not to meetings or to strategy sessions or to the obligations they shared. To her. Just to her. He started sitting at the breakfast table before either of them had anywhere to be. He started knocking on her office door just to ask if she had eaten. He started learning, slowly, the version of her that only appeared when she felt safe. The dry humor, the strong opinions, the way she laughed at things she found genuinely funny, which was different from her polite social smile, and completely worth waiting for. And Haerin let him come closer. Not immediately, not all at once, but steadily, the way she did everything, with patience, and with full knowledge of what she was doing, and without any illusion about the man standing in front of her. She did not need him to be perfect, she just needed him to finally, actually, show up. And this time, he did.